do people pray on New Year's Day? According to folklorists, this did not begin as a way to wish for good luck for the coming year, but instead originated as a way to connect to the spirits of the dead. For the Japanese people of old, New Year's was a time where the border between our world and the land of the dead became fuzzy and vague. The spirits descended from the mountains into towns and villages, and this was seen as a special time of year. Depending on the area, some people viewed New Year's as the coming of the harvest god, or the coming of the spirits of their ancestors. But regardless of where you went, New Year's was a time for the deceased. Because of this, people often went to shrines for Hatsumode, the first shrine visit of the year, a tradition that continues to this day. This was a special time to spend with the spirits of the dead. Who knew that New Year's had such occultish origins? Hey guys, this is your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. New Year's is just around the corner, so to begin this week's episode, I'd like to ask you guys a question. Do you have any strange traditions or superstitions regarding New Year's? As for me, perhaps not strange, but every year I like to watch the Waratte wa Ikenai special on TV. If you haven't heard of it, it's a show where 5 comedians are forbidden to laugh for an entire day. They're put into more and more crazy situations to make them break. And if they do, they have to face a punishment game. I first stumbled across it several years back when I was living in Japan, and I've watched it every year since. I also used to collect wooden arrows that the shrines sell on New Year's Day. These arrows are called demon-breaking arrows, and they're supposed to ward off misfortune and bring good luck. One year in particular, I went to Tokyo and visited several shrines. I ended up trying to bring 10 or so rather large wooden arrows back home with me on the bus. They were really high quality, and each shrine has their own design, so for a collector like me, they were hard to resist. Eventually throwing them out was even harder, though. So for this episode, we're going to be looking at some scary New Year's tales. In Japan, there are a lot of different customs and traditions over New Year's. People generally visit a shrine or temple to pray for good luck for the upcoming year. Families typically eat osechi ryori, which is a boxed New Year's meal that symbolizes health and happiness. It's also common to see people lining up for hours in bigger cities to buy fukubukuro, which is a mystery bag full of items from a particular shop that's sold at a very steep discount. A lot of people also watch Kohaku Utagassen on TV, a kind of singing competition between popular artists of the year, with a healthy smattering of older enka singers. This first story, however, features someone's unique family custom for New Year's. This one's called I Can't Look at My Reflection at Midnight on New Year's. In my family, we have a strange custom. When the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Day, you must not look at your own reflection. Not in the mirror, not at your reflection in the water, not even at your own reflection on a wet plate. You often hear stories about things you mustn't look at, but apparently this one is because you will see yourself at the time of your death. So, in our house, we usually eat our New Year's soba noodles early, and then go to bed before it gets too late. When I was just a child, that was fine. But as I got older, I wanted to watch TV late into the night, or go visit a shrine with my friends at midnight. So it became really annoying. One year, I wanted to watch TV to bring in the new year, so I was sitting there alone watching something as it passed 11 p.m. My parents told me to be asleep by 12 a.m, but I I didn't believe in such superstitions, so I thought I'd be okay. I listened to the announcement of the time on my phone, and the TV also had a countdown to midnight. I was excited to stay up late for the first time ever. The time is 11:59 and 40 seconds. The time is 11:59 and 50 seconds. Right as it announced the time was 50 seconds, the TV turned off. I wasn't even near the remote. I could see myself reflected in the TV screen. I instantly closed my eyes as the announcement for midnight was made. Then, as it passed 12 a.m., the TV came back on like nothing had happened. The next year, I was also watching TV. The very instant before the date changed, the TV once again turned off. As the new year came, the TV went back to normal. Another year, I went to visit a shrine, and right before midnight, a car suddenly stopped right in front of me. I could see myself in the reflection of the window, and as soon as I realized, I quickly closed my eyes. I couldn't move. Yet another year, suddenly some window blinds went up and I could see myself in the window. It seemed that no matter what, when the new year rolled around, something wanted me to see my own reflection. Some type of accident would happen right as the date changed. However, if I was asleep, nothing ever happened. 4 years ago, I got married and changed my name, but regardless, if I'm awake at midnight on New Year's, then the TV will still turn off, or my mug might break, spilling water all over the place. It's a little sad I can't watch Gaki no Tsukai, so I just record it and watch it later. But when I watch the recording, nothing strange ever happens. If I see my own reflection as the new year arrives, something bad will happen. Supposing I see myself as I usually am, perhaps that means I won't be around to welcome in the new year. As I mentioned earlier, it's extremely common for people to visit a shrine as the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Day, or to visit it later when the sun has come up. This next story is about a young lady who went to visit an Inari temple for New Year's, but got a little more good luck than she was bargaining for. This one's called, Aren't I Great? Until the new year of last year, I was a heavy drinker. I could drink an entire casket of shochu like it was nothing, and I could down whiskey like it was tea. On New Year's Eve the year before last, I went to the nearby Inari temple to pass the new year. I prayed, and as I passed under the shrine gate, I suddenly heard this sound, like something really heavy had dropped from my body. I looked down, but nothing was there. My brother, who was also with me, also heard the sound. I felt like I'd suddenly gotten lighter, but when I weighed myself upon returning home, I was the same weight as usual. When I fell asleep, I dreamt about a small girl. "How do you feel? Lighter? Lighter? Aren't I great?" she said, while jumping all around me. When I woke up, it was New Year's Day. All of our relatives were over and, of course, everyone was drinking. I might have one too, I thought, and put a drink to my lips. But my body refused to receive it. It wouldn't pass my throat. When I tried forcing it down, I had to run straight to the toilet. I threw it all up. Since then, I haven't been able to drink at all. My friends and family were worried about me, but I went to see the doctor and they didn't find anything abnormal. My brother and I decided that the sound we heard that time must have been the sound of some sake-drinking monster that was attached to me falling off. But it's a little inconvenient not being able to drink anymore, so I still can't really praise the little girl that appeared in my dream. Our next story is about a group of friends who gather for a New Year's party. Because they haven't seen each other in so long, they decide to go visit some new ghost spots together. But what they don't yet know is that this may be the last time they ever see each other again. Find out what happens in The Tunnel of Rumour. This happened about 10 years ago. It was around the New Year's holidays, and a bunch of my friends who had moved away gathered for a reunion party. I think, regardless of where you live, there are always stories about particular ghost spots. Where I'm from, Nagasaki, the most famous haunted house was torn down, so there was nothing else around worth mentioning. Of course, we knew the place wasn't a real haunted mansion, but we didn't know of any other scary places around town. Seeing as it had been so long since we were all together, 3 of us decided to go for a drive. There was Uchino, alias, male, Shiraishi, alias, female, and Hisamatsu, myself, of course, also an alias. We were really excited. Without a particular destination in mind, we drove around until the early hours of the morning, when we came upon an infamous tunnel where ghosts had supposedly been seen. We were all adults and it was late, but we decided, what the hell, let's check it out. To be honest, I'd used the tunnel numerous times and nothing had ever happened. But we decided it would be something cool to tell the others about, so we agreed to have a look. Uchino was driving, and at first he wanted to park the car somewhere out of the way, so we could all walk through the tunnel together. But the road outside the tunnel was narrow, and there was no space. He decided to park on the other side, and said he would wait for the 2 of us to come out. Just in case some cars came, he would be able to move aside and call out to us. But it was also cold, so maybe he just didn't want to get out of the car. Shiraishi and I got out of the tunnel entrance, and Uchino drove inside. He started honking the horn, messing around, and when he exited the tunnel, we saw the hazard lights go on. However, they soon disappeared, and we couldn't even see the tail lights. At the time, I thought he turned them off on purpose to try and scare us. The tunnel was so narrow that barely a single bus could pass through it, and it was short enough that you could see from one end to the other. If an opposing car came, one would have to wait on the other side of the tunnel for it to pass. It was creepy, but we passed through without incident. When we reached the other side, Uchino wasn't there. There were no cars coming, and we could see the exit while we were walking, so we should have been able to see if he took off. It would have been really shitty of him to leave us behind late at night in such an unpopulated area, so Shiraishi called him. "We're here. Where are you?" "Huh? I haven't moved. I'm in the same spot." "What? But we just exited the tunnel." "I don't know what you're saying. No one's here. Who's that? Hello? Hello?" In the end, the phone disconnected, and when we tried to call back, the phone said it was out of range. My phone was still inside Uchino's car, but hanging around wouldn't do us much good, so we decided to walk back to the main road and call a taxi. We were out in the countryside, so we had to wait quite a while, and it ended up being really expensive. After that, Uchino went missing. Strangely, my phone never said that it was out of range, and it rang each time we tried to call it. The next morning, someone found it by the tunnel entrance while out walking and picked it up for me. It came back without a scratch. Uchino stopped the car at the tunnel exit, so why was my phone found near the entrance? That was strange, but While I was calling Uchino over and over from Shiraishi's phone, I noticed several attempts from Uchino trying to call us too. Only one call got through. "Hisamatsu, when are you coming out?" That was it. After that was just a lot of noise and I couldn't make anything out. Uchino still hasn't been found, and around this time every year, I remember what happened. It still brings me down, even now. I've passed through that tunnel several times since then, and nothing has ever happened. And there are no places within the tunnel where my phone ever goes out of range. Our last story for this week is one I've translated exclusively for this show. You won't find it anywhere else. It's about a young man who often fights with his father on New Year's. But this time things go too far and he decides to spend the night in a hotel. But what's wrong with this particular room? Find out in Business Hotel. I started living in Tokyo when I was 20 years old. Every New Year's I have a lot of free time, so I go back to my family home in the suburbs. I'm always reminded of how Tokyo is a gathering ground for those in the outer suburbs, because on my way out, the highways are empty. They're so empty that on New Year's I can get home in just 15 minutes. I only have one parent at home now, my father. He's a little, how would you say, mischievous. Or perhaps full of life. In New Year's gone by, we often got into violent arguments and fistfights. Of course, I now consider myself an adult, so that sort of behaviour has died down. That was a little off topic, but that's what our relationship is like. We're kinda like old friends. But of course, it's embarrassing for the two of us to spend New Year's with only each other for company. So each year we visit his relative's house and eat nabe, drink sake, and tell stupid stories to each other. His relatives, my uncle, aunt, and cousin, are all bright and happy people, so it was always fun. Oh, on that note, my aunt and uncle are some of those so-called, what do you call them? The people who can see ghosts. I often get caught up in their adventures, but that's a story for another day. So I went back home for New Year's, taking my new digital SLR camera with me. My birthday's at the end of the year, and my friends all threw a party for me and asked me what I wanted. I mentioned I wanted a camera, and so they got one for me. It was such good timing, and I was really happy to have it, so I thought I'd take some photos at home with it. Everyone in my family is a heavy drinker. While we ate nabe, everyone got more and more drunk. My father picked up the camera and started taking pictures of everyone. "My friends gave me that. Be careful," I warned him. But of course, that was stupid of me. That just worked him up even more. He stuck the camera in the nabe pot and started taking photos, and he dropped it on the ground on purpose. At first I tried to laugh it off, but then he began to escalate more and more. And because I'd been drinking, I said to him, "You better stop that, or I'm gonna get angry." We were always like this, so the rest of the family just laughed. I don't usually get drunk when I drink alcohol, but sake is my one weakness. For that reason, I only drink it on New Year's. And thinking back on it, that's probably why we fought every year at that time. Of course, my father continued to carry on, and I got pissed off. "I said quit it, you moron!" My aunt stepped in to stop us before things got out of hand. "Get out of my face, idiot!" The situation had reached boiling point. There was nothing she could do anymore. Having said that, I was old enough that I didn't want to get into a fight anymore, so I decided to leave instead. I had been drinking, so I couldn't drive, and I didn't want to bother looking for someone to take me home. So I called my credit card company and had them find me a nearby hotel. Of course, the hotel I usually stay in was full. I asked them to find another, but the only hotel that had a room was in the next town over, and a taxi there would cost 5,000 yen. I asked them to call me a taxi as well. My father came outside, yelling, "Oh, you think you're so big and mature now, huh?" The situation exploded again. My aunt tried to stop us. "Come on, guys, it's New Year's. Please don't fight." But I was so angry. I'd already entered my demon mode. "Piss off," I yelled at her. "I'm sorry, Auntie." The taxi arrived and I shook my aunt off and got in. The driver had already been informed of which hotel to go to, so I sat in the back shaking with anger, wiping down my camera. I was already quite drunk, so the soft suspension in the taxi just made me feel even more so. We arrived at the hotel and I asked them to show me to my room right away. In reality, this hotel was also full, but the credit card company insisted, so they managed to find me a spare room. It was incredibly narrow. When I opened the door, the shower and the toilet were on the left. Just after that was a single bed, and on the right was a mirror. There was a single window at the end. The moment I stepped inside, I felt like something was wrong. But it was New Year's, so there was nowhere else to go. At any rate, I was so pissed off at how absurd the whole situation was. Not to mention I was tired, so I threw myself down on the bed right away. I must have been even drunker than I thought, because I was suddenly overcome with drowsiness. At the same time, I heard a ringing in my ears, and I realized I couldn't move. Again, I thought, but I wasn't especially panicked. In my mind, there are two types of sleep paralysis. The first type is when your body is extremely tired, which I've personally experienced several times. The other type is a little more difficult to explain. So, while I was lying there paralyzed, I could feel someone standing by my feet. Possibly several people. I couldn't tell how many. All I knew was that they were trying not to step on my legs, and I could feel the bed pressing in around me. I was still angry, so I screamed in my head, "Piss off! Leave me alone!" Suddenly it stopped, and I fell asleep. A few hours later, I woke up. Again, I couldn't move, and again, the bed caved in around my feet. Someone was definitely standing there. Soundlessly, I yelled out, "I said piss off! What the hell is wrong with you?" And then I fell asleep again. A few hours after that, I again woke up. This time, the bed was shaking an unbelievable amount near my feet. This might actually be a problem, I thought. And then I saw an old man wearing a monk's robes or work clothes or something. He muttered, crawling towards me. The voice got louder and louder until it was right next to my ear. I was so annoyed that everything kept interrupting my sleep that I screamed and kicked out. "I said shut up!" The old man disappeared into the wall. I looked at the clock, and it was past 3:30 a.m. I called the front desk. "Could you call me a taxi, please?" It was quite early in the morning, so the person on the other end asked, "Did something happen?" "I'll tell you after," I said, and hung up the phone. I was scared, but I was also covered in sweat, so I decided to have a shower. I left the door open and made sure not to close my eyes. I got ready to leave, and then called my aunt. I told her everything that happened, and by that time it was now past 4 a.m. It was just starting to get light outside, and I noticed something strange on the wall near the bed. There were 3 spots, all different sizes. At first I thought perhaps it was part of a painting, but it was too low to be that. When I touched it, it felt thin. This has to be it, I thought. I was scared, so I mentioned it to my aunt. Auntie, I think it's this. There's some strange marks here. I'm gonna take a few pictures, so can you look at them for me later? Look, I'm scared, so can you just get out, okay? My aunt pleaded, but I took my camera out anyway. I was oddly calm. I pressed the shutter button, but nothing happened. It was like what you always see in those ghost TV shows. I suddenly felt scared, so I ran to the front desk and I explained what happened. I tried to joke with the lady to lighten the mood, and I asked her, "Can you go and get my cell phone? I think I forgot it." But she just let out a little scream. I got in the taxi and I told the driver everything that had happened since the day before. We had to cover quite a bit of distance, so I thought it would be a good way to fill in the time. Plus I was still worked up from it all. Then he turned to me. "Sir, couldn't it be that your father broke the camera last night, which is why it didn't work?" Come to think of it, that was a possibility. I took the camera out of my bag and I aimed it at the back of the driver's head. I pressed the shutter button. A bright flash filled the inside of the cab. We both fell silent. I later looked up that hotel on the internet. Seems it's quite famous as a ghost spot. I don't think I'll ever stay there again though. Just who was that old guy? So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's New Year's episode. If there are any other themes or stories that you'd like to see in future episodes, you can let me know in the comments below. And don't forget about this week's question. Do you have any strange traditions or superstitions about New Year's? Thanks guys, and we'll see you again next week for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.